to look at Adobe Express and how you can use it to create infographics. So what I'm going to do is the BBC actually have this really useful article about what infographics are, how to create them, kind of good practice. And I often use it to refer to it. I mean, it's kind of geared towards their own brand guidelines, but there are still some helpful bits of information on it. So I'll just pop that in the chat and you can browse that at your own leisure. And I don't know if you've got the URL to log into Adobe Express. I can send that over as well. I'll pop that in the chat. So you'll need to log in with your Goldsmith's email address and password. So what is an infographic? So an infographic basically, and it's here at the top of the BBC article that I've just sent, it's short for information graphic, and it's a visual representation of information or data. So they're used a lot in digital journalism, because they can be embedded into web articles, onto websites, and it allows readers, users to quickly digest information. Often they can be about quite dense topics, but it's just a really helpful way to visually display information. So today we are going to have a go at creating some infographics in Adobe Express. We'll start with using the graphing tool. So all graphs, I suppose, are infographics, but not every infographic is a graph. And then we'll have a go if we have time. I'm just aware that we've started a bit late. We'll have a go at using some of the built-in icons to create something a bit more custom. And we're not going to follow the kind of BBC brand guidelines, but I'm going to create something that's a little bit more fun and interesting, hopefully, anyway. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to click on this blue plus up here. We're going to create a new project, and I'm going to select this one-to-one square. That's just going to create a new square canvas for me. I'm going to give this a meaningful name. So the topic of this infographic is going to be reasons to own a cat. And if I just come over here, I will just share with you my cat data. It's taken from a report by Cats Protection, which is a charity that looks after cats in the UK. So I've gone through that annual report and I've just extracted some data, and I'm going to use, if you please download this spreadsheet, because any changes that you make will update for everybody, so please download it. What I'm going to do is, if you look at one of the tabs across the bottom, we've got on this sheet main reasons for owning a cat, and this is the data that we're going to pop into our infographic, and it's this 2013. 2013. I'm 10 years behind. 2023 data. Strangely, it's been kind of displayed as a percentage, even though all of the percentages don't add up to 100. There is a reason for that in the report, the actual report, which I can send over if you're particularly interested. But I'm not going to dwell on that today because we're going to just use the data as is. So I'm coming back to Adobe Express and we're going to go ahead and add in a pie chart. So I can come down here to it says charts and grids, and you can see I've got charts up here. If I click view all, I can click once and add a pie chart and it will just plop it in there. Now, it's important to point out that this is not as powerful as Microsoft Excel. You don't have the same level of customization that you do in Adobe Illustrator, for example. But it is still useful for creating quick and easy bits of content. So with my pie chart selected, I know it's selected because we've got this bounding box. I get my pie chart options over here, and I can go through and I can add my data in. And this is a very manual practice, so no easy way to copy and paste. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly move this data over. So I'll just resize these windows a little bit so you can see I've got, how many things is that? 10 categories. So I'm going to add 10 items into my pie chart. And I'm just going to go through and add in the data like this. So it's just a case of copying and pasting each item over. And like I say, there's no easy way to do this. It is just a very manual process. And then I can pop in my value, and you'll see that this will look a bit weird as I add more values in, but it should readjust as we add in our values. So we've got 40, because of course with the pie chart, you're not you're not displaying raw data in any meaningful way. It's just a way to get a sense of proportions of data. 40, 34, 26, 24, 21, 18, 18. And of course, this is perhaps not the best way to display this data. There we are. So that's all of my data added in. We don't need to come back to that spreadsheet. If I just go full screen. So our data has been added in. I've got these different options up here, so I can change the way this looks. So I can add in the actual numbers, the values. I can also add in the category names. I can add in like a legend like that. All of these different options. I'm going to go with this legend down here. And you can see that you have to resize the whole thing. You can't separate out the legend. Has to be one large box, but you can see it does kind of resize within that box. If I use these sausage handles along the side, we'll use these points in the corners to resize like that. So pretty straightforward, but we can make this look a bit better. We need to give, of course, our chart a title. And I can just, oops, if I select this, I should be able to, if I decide later on that actually this is a better way to represent the data, then I can do that just by clicking, making sure that my chart is selected in my canvas, and then selecting the new chart type. Okay. Please feel free to pop any questions you have in the chat as we go. So let's make this look a little bit nicer. Let's say we're going to share this on social media or something like that. I'm going to change the background color to something that's not white. Maybe we can just go for a bit of this kind of off-white, beigey color. It's a nice contrast to the blue. And of course, if I want to change the colors of my chart, I can click on it over here and I can select each of these color boxes here and give it a new color. And I can, of course, change the font just like this. But I'm going to keep the font as the default. I will leave you to play with that in your own time. So I need to give this a title. To do that, I can go over here to where it says text. Press add my text up there. This will create a new text box for me. And I can pop in main reasons for owning a pet cat in the UK. I can select that text, can make it bold, can change the font. Maybe I want to move this over as far as it can go. You can see with all of this category stuff underneath, it can be quite tricky to get it all lined up, but of course I can resize this text if I so wish. Make that size 50. Perhaps I want to show my margins by clicking this margins button up here. I get the margins. Frustratingly, it doesn't snap to the margins. They are just there as a guide, but it can be quite useful. And what else can I do? I think we need some pictures of some cats. So if I come over here to where it says media, I can upload images from my device if I so wish, or I can browse the built-in stock library. I can click on photos. And I can then have a look at some cats. So if I click on an image once, it will pop it in. And I can select it. And then I can actually just click this remove background button. And it had a nice simple background. So I can do something a little bit like that. Let's go through and add some more cat pictures, just to give it a bit of visual interest. I can just click these ones and they will just be added in. And I'm deliberately picking ones that have quite empty backgrounds because it'll make it easier to kick out to cut them out. I'm just going to move them around a little bit. Okay. And you've got additional options down here, so you can play around with some basic photo editing options like brightness, contrast, and saturation. We can also change the opacity so we can make them a bit transparent. You can also change the blend modes, and that changes, if you're familiar with Photoshop, you might already be familiar with blend modes. These two options change how white and black areas of an image interact with other parts of an image. So you can see here under multiply, the darker parts of the image have been preserved, but the whiter parts have become transparent. And here, the darker parts of the image have become transparent, but the the white parts are preserved. So you can sometimes come up with some quite nice effects using those. So let's have a go at arranging these just on the page. Can resize them quickly. And I think it's okay if you want to have a little bit of overlap, like the cat's ear overlapping there. Of course, you don't want to overlap too much, otherwise you will lose the detail. Resize. Just like doing any piece of creative work in Adobe apps, you have to fiddle around, and that's absolutely fine. And I think we probably need to have a reference or a citation explaining where this data has come from. So if I just have a quick look at Zotero, I've got it here. Go to my text, add some text. There is a date, it's 2023. I think I pressed citation instead of bibliography. Oh, there we are. I did. There we are. And obviously that is quite large. I can just resize it. I don't know why it's not putting a date in there. And there is definitely a date, 2023. And what I can do is I can then just pop this somewhere on my infographic. Maybe down here at the bottom. Resize. Just so people know that my data has come from a reputable source. And it is a shame we can't detach the legend from the graphic and move those around separately. Well, I can actually pop that in as a percentage, but for whatever reason, it's changed all of the numbers. So yeah, you've got these additional options here. I think we really need to have that the legend there, otherwise it doesn't really make much sense. Maybe we can move my cats around. If we're clever, I'd be able to get them to fit quite nicely. Fit that cat into there. Bring that one over there a little bit. So you can see you can just fiddle with this and, and get it really looking quite good. And then maybe we also want to add in a bit of a nice quotation, which I did have saved over here. And then again, same process. And resize this. We might want to make it bold so it stands out a bit. Resize this down. Play with the formatting a little bit to make it look better. Because it's a bit of a block quotation, it might be appropriate for us to remove the quotations and pop it in italics like that. And again, it's just a case of trying to squeeze all of this information into there. Make this one a little bit bigger maybe. And I can pop that there. Okay, so we're looking good. What else might I want to do with this? Well, I could, of course, I can download it now, save it as a ping, which will just pop it in my downloads folder. So that's really helpful. Or I can also add in some animations if this was going on Instagram or TikTok. It might be quite nice to just do a little bit of animation just to add a bit of visual interest. So I can just select each of these individual elements and click on the animations. We've got edit over here. Click on the animation button and we can do having them slide in. You can fiddle around with these options as well. And we can do intros and outros. So that was our intro. And we can also add in some outros as well. And then what I can do is if I just press play down here, okay, perfect. So now if I go up to the download button, you can see it's detected there are animations. So now it's suggesting instead of being a PNG, we can actually do an MP4 instead. I can hit download. I can then just open that. There we are. And of course, if that was on Instagram, it would loop back and forth. Okay, so that's using the chart tool, but we can also, of course, create something that is a little bit more customized within the constraints of Adobe Express, of course. We don't get the same level of customization that we do in Illustrator, for example. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to represent this data, which is the population of cats in the UK. So just looking at the difference between these two. So we've got the owned cat population across 3 years, 21, 22, 23. But we've also got percentage owning cats. Okay, so we've got the cat population and the dog population, and they're quite similar. So maybe it's not worth doing a kind of comparison. So let's stick with this one. We'll do the owned cat population per UK region. So you can see we've got the total UK across the top. There are 11 million owned cats, and then we've got each individual region of the UK. So we've got Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, England, East of England, etc., etc. So let's go back to the home page. That saves automatically. I can always come back to it later. By clicking on my recent files down here, we're going to my stuff. And here it is, just generating a preview. But we'll create something else. We're going to go for a square again. And if I come over to my sidebar, I can click on elements down here. And this is where we can find icons and shapes and things. So let's have a look. Let's search for the UK, so we can get a bit of a map. Okay, that's actually pretty good. Wasn't expecting it to be that easy to find something. But we've got our UK map here, and it's been already split into regions for us. This has been set as the background. I don't know if you saw just now. It's under this background heading. And when you click something in this section, it will automatically make it your background. Easy way to get rid of that. we can just, oh, maybe we can't. But we could detach it from the background, but perhaps that is no longer the case. Oh no, there. We can do it over here, detach background. So this way, we can just resize this to get a bit of a better fit. We want to be a bit clever. Might be able to fiddle around with the color a little bit. Not much though. Go to effect there. I don't think there's an inversion effect, which is a shame. Oh no, there is. So what I can do, let's go with our kind of blue and orange theme. If we go back to edit, we can remove the background. This might not work particularly well. Okay, yeah, it's removed a bit too much there. That's fine. We'll hit undo. If we go back over to our effects, go custom, we'll make our highlights that kind of beige color. We can make this something a bit like that. And then with that, we can just go to the background color. We can make this the same color. And then blends in quite nicely. So let's pull this all the way over. Might want to resize it. We might want to chop off the Shetland Islands. Just so we can really make this big. Let's add some text, just like we did before. Okay, so we can do a UK owned cat population. Millions. There's a title, so we can make it bold. Okay, now let's add in a cat. I'm going to go to icons this time. Let's do view all. We just want like a basic cat icon. If we just go back to this, you can see that it says specifically that we don't want anything with too much detail because it's not going to scale well. So you can see some of these are quite detailed. But we also want something that looks vaguely professional. You know, some of these are a little bit too cutesy. Okay, let's maybe go for, I think it was a reasonable looking one. Let's maybe go for this. And of course, what I could do instead is I could make something in Adobe Illustrator myself and pull that over. So I could maybe go for this one. But I think this one is maybe better. And because this is an icon, I can actually give it its own color. So sticking with our kind of blue theme, maybe give it a nice shade of blue that's going to stand out both on this dark blue background, but also on the yellow. Okay, maybe, yeah, maybe let's go for that. We can always change the color later. And what we want to do is we're going to add in a bit of a key as well. We need this to mean something. Pull that over there, add a text box. our cat icon equals 1 million. That's we can line that up. We can group those together as well. So if I just select both, so click once, press down the Shift key on my keyboard, select another, right click and do group. It means that now they're joined together and I can resize them if I so wish. I can also double click and it will still allow me to edit the text. So if I wanted to change the font, make it bold, I could do that. Okay. So what I'm going to do is we'll just do duplicate. And it's duplicated that within the group. My bad. And we'll just do undo a couple of times. It will select the whole group to duplicate it. And then we will ungroup. Now we've got that on its own. I'm just going to lock this map into place. You can right click and do lock, and then it means I don't accidentally move it. Let's go back to our data now. Okay, so we've got, let's start with Yorkshire and the Humber. 1 million, nice and easy. Here's Yorkshire and the Humber. I'm just going to pop that on there. I might want to resize it a little bit, a bit like that. Maybe this color is not the best color to use, but we can worry about that later. Right now, what I want to see is just the principle. If I go back to my data, we've got 1.1 for the West Midlands, which I think is this region. If I hold the Alt key or the Option key if you're on a Mac, I can quickly duplicate, just like in Adobe Illustrator. So I think 1.1 is close enough to 1 million, where we can just use 1. But of course, we could fiddle around with this a little bit and make it bigger. To edit. There's no easy way to make that. Of course, you could do it with size. There's no way to kind of chop it up. So that might be a job that we need to do in Illustrator. I'm just going to delete that and reduplicate it so it is the right size. To the next region on our list, Southwest England. That's 0.9. I think that's close enough to 1 million again. So duplicate it again. Probably put per region in here, shouldn't we? Okay. And go back to this. Southeast England is 1.4. So if we were going to round this up, we might want to try and work out a way to get another half of a cat. This is the southeast. Of course, I can zoom in if I so wish. No, I think what we would need to do is probably create a half version of this in Illustrator. I don't think there's a way to split it in half. Could probably get away with it here actually by using a a rectangle that's the same background color. But I think there's a little bit too much detail here. Maybe come back to it at the end. Northwest is 1, northeast is 0.4. So here's the northwest. Here's the northeast. Let's have a go at trying to mask off half of that. And go to shapes. Let's change the color. I can't remember what color I picked. So I can just try to mask that off. So we've kind of got half of a cat there. And I can group that together. Might need to be a little bit clever with my positioning, because I don't want it to cross those kind of lines. You get the idea. So we've got half of a cat there, so that's 500,000. Greater London, now we're going to run into issues. Because we need to fit 1.5 cats into this. So maybe what I would want to do is lump the southeastern London together in one region. So we've got London and the southeast. So that's actually 3 million cats nearly in total. So do my Alt and drag trick. I can group those 3 together. The East Midlands, 0.7. I think that's the East Midlands. Just going to duplicate all of these around. Then we can come back. And make changes. So I think in Northern Ireland it was 0.2. And again, it's kind of going back to that pie chart thing. We're not necessarily wanting people to have access or understand the data specifically. This is just to give a visual representation of the different Northern Ireland is 0.2, Wales is 0.6, Scotland is 0.8. Okay, so let's keep that as 1. We can do our half cat for Wales. Pop that down here. And see it's kind of just caught the edge of it there. And we might want to do this again. So if we imagine that's half, probably want half of half for about 0.2. So something a bit like that. And then it said east of England. I'm assuming that's East Anglia, which is this bit here. So we could, of course, group that, Alt and drag it over. If it's 1.2 or thereabouts, able to just squeeze those up nicely next to each other. And of course, it might have been more appropriate for us to actually swap this around, so it's one full one, like this. But then we're going to have issues. If I just right click and bring it to the front, maybe we might be able to sort it out. There we are. Perfect. So you get the idea. We can play around. We can use these icons to represent specific measurements. You've got a load of different maps, different elements built straight into Adobe Express that we can use, that we can leverage in order to represent our data visually. And again, we probably want to actually add in a text box that has our data. Is that still on my clipboard? Nope. Just quickly copy and paste that over again. There we are. I can resize, bring that down there. This is 2023. And of course, for good measure, for a bit of visual interest, let's pop a cat in. Okay, so we can, of course, keep kind of fiddling around, adding more cats if we wanted to make it a bit playful. Not necessary. It's kind of a perfect one, actually. Fits that gap nicely. So you get the idea. Another way of displaying information visually, and same process, we can just do download. It's detected it's a ping. I can hit download and it will pop it into my downloads folder rather. And there it is, ready to post on social media. I didn't give it a good name. I'll quickly do that. So we can do UK owned cat population per region. Perfect. So does anybody have any questions about what we have covered today? Now is the time to ask them. You can pop them in the chat or take yourself off mute. Is there anything specific that you'd like me to go over again, perhaps? I will just pop that link into the chat because, Muskin, I don't think you will be able to see it because you joined a little bit later. You know, it's good for displaying data in a very basic way, but anything more complicated, then we're probably going to start using Illustrator or Excel, perhaps. Ah, yes. Flourish is an excellent piece of software, and it's got really good integration into Adobe Illustrator as well. But of course, because it's got that good integration into Illustrator, and then you've got the integration in from Illustrator into Express, you can set up a quite nice workflow to go Flourish, Illustrator, Express to then post on social media. So yeah, I completely agree. You know, you don't have the same level of customization that you do in those other more professional applications. But if it's within your skill set, then you absolutely can kind of work in that way. Just even if it's just a case of, you know, using Express to link your socials up, like I have. If I just go back to the home page, you know, you can use the scheduling tool. If you link this to your social accounts, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc., then you've got that kind of full workflow in place. And of course, if you wanted to add a little bit of animation like you saw, then perfect way to do it as well, from Illustrator into Express and then to share. That's great. Thank you very much for coming. If nobody's got any other questions, then I shall finish up the session here. It would be great, of course, if you could just fill in the workshop evaluation survey, which I'll pop a link to there in the chat. And I will hopefully see you at a workshop in the future.